We're on page 22 for our lesson this morning. We're ready to begin lesson 7, titled Sins of the Flesh. Certainly appreciate all who are here. Want to encourage everyone to participate in whatever way you're comfortable doing, asking questions, making comments. Those who are joining us online, we're glad that you're able to do that as well. Jeremy, would you lead us in a prayer, please, before we begin?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you've allowed us on this Lord's Day to come out of the world and enter into this Bible study and a short while here to worship as you commanded us to do as Christians all over the world are doing so in accordance with your plan. We thank you for that opportunity. We pray that as we open your word that you'll help us to put worldly things out of our minds and our thoughts and focus on what you have us to learn from you and from the plan that you set forth for us. Even the other classes this morning, the teachers, things are being prepared, things that are taught and said, the discussion and things that are done are in accordance with your will, that you'll help us to grow stronger to you and grow in knowledge and in wisdom, that we can not only improve our own lives, but teach others, and be an example of others, and live the Christian life that you would have us to live. Heavenly Father, we're mindful that there are those that are unable to be with us this morning, and pray that whatever hinders them from being here, that you'll remove it from their path. We can help, that you'll help us to do that as well. And as always, Heavenly Father, we ask that if we've come short and we've failed, as we know we have, we pray that you'll help us to recognize that, ask for forgiveness as we do now, and turn from that in the future, so that we can live closer to you. Be with Tim now, and be with us, and continue to bless us. Worship to your Son, we pray. Amen.
Amen. The title of our book is Abstain from Worldliness, and what we're going to be talking about this morning are sins of the flesh. 3 different particular sins of the flesh that we're going to discuss between this morning and Wednesday night, Lord willing. But they entail a lot of other things that the Bible tells us are sinful that we want to avoid. We're going to begin by reading from Romans chapter 1. We're going to read verses 24 through 27, and we'll be coming back to this particular chapter, and there will be more verses that we will read throughout the lesson. But let's read those 4 verses to begin our study this morning. Romans chapter 1, verse 24. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was due. All right, we'll talk more about these verses in just a little while as we get into our lesson. Let me just ask this question. As we're reading here from Romans chapter 1, to whom is Paul speaking? About whom is Paul speaking? What group of people? Okay, he's talking to those who are unrighteous. That is exactly right. What other answer could we give? As a matter of fact, when you go to chapter 2, he begins talking about the Jews. Now I'm giving you a clue. Who's he talking about there in Romans chapter 1? He's talking about the Gentile world and the wickedness that existed in the Gentile world and in the world in general. All right, sexual indiscretion, pornography, and immodest attire. Promiscuous behavior. I want to, before we read some of these bullets that are in the book, sexual indiscretion. At one time, if a person was indiscreet sexually, what did they try to do? Let's just say when I was a boy, I can go back, my memory can't go back this far, but in the mid-50s when I was born, what would happen if somebody was indiscreet sexually? They got on Facebook and they were advertising, they were telling the whole world, and they were proud of it. Tried to keep it hidden. And why did people try to keep it hidden? It was just as immoral then as it is now. People were ashamed. They were ashamed because of sexual indiscretion. And we have digressed. A lot of people would say we've made progress. We have digressed to the point to where it is just so common that there is no shame whatsoever. Sexual immorality, and we're going to talk about some maybe a little more specific here, but the New King James Version uses the word sexual immorality, which would entail what? Fornication, adultery, homosexuality, any kind of sexual relation outside of a God-approved marriage is sexual immorality. That's right. That's exactly right. If a man, and we'll look at Matthew 5 here in just a little while, that's exactly right. And if you were to get out here and state that to the world, they would think, what are you talking about? And that's where we have digressed. Not that sexual indiscretion hasn't been around for almost since the beginning of mankind, but the fact that it's looked upon just casually. And because the world looks upon it casually, does that have any effect upon us? It does. It's to the, you hear something or you see something, and if we're not careful, and I'm talking to myself, it's like, well, that's just the way people are. And that is the way people are, but it's sinful. It'll cause a person to be lost. Does it matter where a person is economically or educationally as far as sexual indiscretion? I mean, is it just for those poor, ignorant people? Start to say, like me? It's across presidents of the United States, presidents and CEOs of companies. I don't know how many times I've seen, and I'd rather not look, how many teachers have been involved in sexual indiscretion with students. And it just seems like it is more and more. To the point, again, it's just doesn't seem like a big deal. All right, let's talk about promiscuous behavior. This was reported in 2005 by MSNBC News. More than 65 million people are living with incurable sexually transmitted diseases. Here is a high school in Memphis, Tennessee. This was in 2001. We're talking about 20 years ago. 18% of the female students at Fraser High School in Memphis are pregnant. That's one out of nearly every 5. Now, does that shock anybody?
What shocks you more is
Oh, excuse me, does this say 2011? Sure does. I'm shocked by that, Gary. You're right, just 10 years ago. 10 years ago. "20% of middle school students in Tampa public schools say they have participated in sexual acts." Middle school students, that was, do I have my dates right, 2005? So that was 16 years ago. Now, I worked in the middle school for 24 years. You're talking about 11, 12, 13, and sometimes 14-year-olds. You're talking about children. And you know, not that this isn't, I don't know, what size is Tampa? I've never been to Tampa. I know it's a pretty good sized town. But one thing I know, are there any churches, Lord's churches in Tampa? I know there are. I know there are. Matter of fact, there's a small college there in Tampa that Christians teach at and others attend. And I just say, we're not talking about somewhere in some out in the middle of nowhere place where people do not have access to knowing what the truth is. But the truth has no bearing on what a lot of people do. Nearly half of the high school students in Tampa public schools say they are sexually active. That was in 2005, the same, probably the same article. Again, we're talking about almost half of the high school students in this public school system. Now, would we expect, let's just say Huntsville City, Decatur City, Madison City, would we expect this to be far less in these? No. Pardon? That's an excellent point. It's not just the young people who are forgetting God. Tampa, around 400,000. Okay. Pornography is a $97 billion business worldwide. That was 2006. That's 15 years ago. I don't have any idea what it would be today. But still, that's staggering. Pornography is 12% of all websites, and 42% of internet users view porn regularly. 2006. Now, we had talked about some of this in some other classes, in a men's class that we had, and Lynn had made this point. I remember, Lynn, you can correct me, but when it says 12% of all websites, when you think about how many websites there are, how many people even have websites, individuals have websites, and 12% of all the websites, which would be, that's a staggering number. That's a staggering number. 89% of sexual solicitations of youths are made in chat rooms on the internet. Top 10 reviews, 2005. Now, let's look at that last bullet right there. How many of you know what a chat room is? Okay, few people do. Few people do. Okay. Okay, chat rooms, I wouldn't, yeah, there, by the way, if you're in a chat room, you're outdated. Snapchat, is that what you said? It's just TikTok. I've heard of that. What does that say about us and our young people? They're not being monitored, and so what we must do is monitor what our children are doing online. And they will not like it, and the response is, who cares? That's right. Who cares? Right, right. Right, okay. Yeah, I saw that too on something. Here is the thing, and most of us, there are a few of us, I'm one of them, that still have children at home. And I can remember my older children. I can't remember who it was. It may have been more than one. It may have been all of them. I went in her room, and she said, well, this is my room. I said, no, you're mistaken. This is my room. I allow you to live here, but this is my room. And I'm not saying you can't do some things but this, when parents abdicate their authority to their children, or they just don't care, and unfortunately that's where we are in many situations. Children are children. Adults are adults, and adults have to be adults and help children. And you may have been like me. Once I got up pretty good size in high school, I always had the right to do anything that I wanted to, but I didn't have the right to do it in the house where I lived. And what I mean by that is, if I remember being told, and that mean old man sitting right back there on the back seat, that if when you think you can make your decision to do what you want to, you just find you a place to live. We don't turn things over to our children. Okay, that's kind of off the what we're talking about, but it's, and Lynn makes an important point. The government cannot, nor can anybody else regulate this. We have to regulate this, first of all, for ourselves, and then we have to do it for our children and others. Yes. These statistics may no longer shock us. We live in a society that craves any means of sexual gratification. I want to stop right here before we go any further. We live in a society that craves any means of sexual gratification. Other than what we've talked about, how do we see that out here in the world? How do we see that among people we're with? Sometimes even among Christians. How do we see that inactions. And we live in a society that craves any means of sexual gratification. By the clothing that people wear. Or they don't wear. TV. Their speech. I've said this and it happened again. I'm over here getting gas and, I don't know why people think that everybody else wants to hear what they're listening to. And if it was something worth listening to, it would be, but if I didn't think I'd get shot, I'd probably say to the person, would you please turn that down? It's unbelievable. So the way people dress, the way people talk, the way people conduct themselves. In this lesson, we will discuss many issues associated with sexual immorality. But before we get into specifics, we need to see what leads so many down this evil pathway. The wise writer of Proverbs pleads with his son to listen to his instruction concerning the tragedy of sexual indiscretion. To make his point, he tells him of a youth he saw one evening from the window of his house. This youth lacked discretion, and the choices he would make over the next few moments would drastically affect his life. So we're going to read from Proverbs chapter 7, verses 6 through 27. I'll be reading from the New King James. For at the window of my house I looked through my lattice, and saw among the simple, I perceived among the youths a young man devoid of understanding, passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. And there a woman met him with the attire of a harlot and a crafty heart. She was loud and rebellious. Her feet would not stay at home. At times she was outside, at times in the open square, lurking at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him. With an impudent face she said to him, I have peace offerings with me. Today I have paid my vows. So I came out to meet you, diligently to seek your face, and I have found you. I have spread my bed with tapestry, colored coverings of Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day. With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately he went after her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till an arrow struck his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost his life. Now therefore, listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For she has cast down many wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. Her house is the way to hell, descending to the chambers of death. Let's answer some questions. When did this young man make his first mistake? All right. He went down a path that carried him by where she was. And so his first mistake was acting upon some knowledge that he had. He should have not done that. That's right. That's right. That's right. Tim?
I would say that it is even before that, because the Proverbs says that he was void of understanding, which leads me to believe that he lacked the interest of going and knowing what
All right? That's right. He lacked understanding. Any other comment? What does the father sharing this story mean by the statement, he took the path or road to her house? How is sexual immorality a path?
He knew where he
Right.
headed down that path.
All right. He knew where he was going. He knew this road or this path led to this woman. It says, how is sexual immorality a path, according to verse 25? That's where it's used.
It's a progressive thing. It doesn't just immediately fall into it. You're lured, you're moved, and it's a path that you continue. It's a block building thing that you get involved in.
Okay. All right. I think about there was, I'm trying to remember where it was, I think it was in Australia, a bridge collapsed. And people were heading toward that bridge, and then people were telling them, don't, you know. Some people didn't know at first, and then they were told, don't go this way. And once people understood that the bridge was out, you know what they did? They stopped. And that's the importance of knowledge, of understanding. It seems to me obvious in the reading here that here was a woman who was well known for what she was doing. Not only that, and we'll talk, one of our questions, it was calculated on her part. Describe the woman in this story. What are the different things we're told about the woman here? Okay, number one, she had on the attire of a harlot. She was loud, rebellious, had a crafty heart. Her feet would not stay at home. How does the New Testament characterize a person like that? What's the words? It's two words I'm thinking of. A streetwalker, that would be the attire of a harlot. That's right, a streetwalker. Someone whose feet won't stay at home. And maybe this applies to a broad. I think about somebody who's a busybody, want to be in everybody, want to go here, there, just do everything, be in everybody's business. What else? She's lurking. Yeah, she is like a predator, and she is scoping out her prey. She was enticing. In what ways did she entice? It says about her, what did it say about her speech? It was flattering. So here she is enticing. She uses flattering speech. She uses body language. What else? Okay. All right. There is no trying to cover up or hide what she is about. It wasn't the first time.
I would say this, all of that answers this question are all warning signs. They are woke. And the inborn person of the law would know this is contrary to the law. They're all. It's all. So warning signs. Stop, run away, close your eyes.
Right. Mhm. She was. She was one of the devil's angels. Okay. She's making appeal to just about all of the senses.
Yeah, she's married.
She's married. What difference does that make? I mean, that's the approach to people today. But she was married. And where's her husband? He's gone away. Is he going to be gone overnight? He's going to be gone longer than that, isn't he? What'd she say? He took a bag of money with him. He won't come back to the appointed time. So here she is. I have several. She is a stalker. Yeah, she's a predator. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you know, if we were to take this and not show that this is what Proverbs teaches, and just draw those points out and put them on a list somewhere and hang it up, and put a phone number on there, and they wouldn't know it's a Bible study for Bible study purposes, you think you'd get any takers? I am sure you would. Or a brand new place these days. Yeah.
We need to remember that what we have here is an older person enticing youth, young man. This is a lesson that's designed to be taught to teenagers too. And the teenager or the young man is not as experienced as the woman, and therefore he was more likely succumb to the temptation that would be new to him
Mhm.
than someone who was older. Therefore, he becomes a very easy prey.
Excellent
Can you read
point.
the first 5 verses? I know we started in verse 6. Read the first 5. He's warned about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told you this. I taught you this.
And when you think about that, what does that tell you about this young man? If he's been taught, well, let's just read those first 5 verses. My son, keep my words and treasure my commands within you. Keep my commands and live. And my law is the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your nearest kin, that they may keep you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words. Had he been given instructions? Had he been given specific instructions? Yes, sir.
In the English Standard Version, he's described as lacking sense.
He didn't take any of those things that he should have into his heart so that he could have dispelled some of this problem, this road that he was headed.
Lacking sense. We might say good judgment.
How many of us have raised teenagers and how they react to instructions that may be given as warning or with repercussions of life? They want to go their own way.
That's exactly right. And here's one of, that's right. And here's one of the things that I used to tell my girls. I understand. Because you know what? When I was a teenager, you know what I wanted to do? I didn't want to get out here and live an ungodly life, but I wanted to kind of do things my way too. I wanted to think for myself, and within limits, that's okay. But here, this young man is just, he's rebellious. It's almost, if Daddy says this, what's he going to do? The opposite. Daddy says this, I'm going to do the opposite.
I was going to say to Gary's comment, how many others have been there?
Yeah.
Not only now, but how many of us have heard from parents what they will understand? You have.
Well, those sure were hurtful words, weren't they, as a kid? I do too. Yeah. One of the things that's difficult for a young person, and we all have been one, is to hear, I have what. Let me stop right there. How do we learn an awful lot? We learn through teaching, but how else do we learn? Here we all are, we're above 40. Experience. We learn from peer pressure too, we surely do. But we learn.
Conversation right now, Tim, with somebody about where and how one gains wisdom. Show me the scores of this person, a college, on this course or series of courses in wisdom.
Experience is a good teacher. Now we need to listen, because when we're young we don't have that experience. But let's go to this next question. She claims to have paid her vows and made peace offerings. Verse 14. What does this mean, and why is she sharing this with him? Okay. All right.
Like she was religious and she's taking care of her religious aspects of God. Now she's free to go do what she wants.
Okay. Eva? Okay. Part of it. Okay. Right. I think the overall idea is this: who paid vows and who made peace offerings? And but people who were religious in nature, and that's kind of the way people. It's not kind of the way; it's the way people are today. A person was telling me, he was talking to another person, and the person told him he's trying to teach him some biblical principles, and this other fellow, who happens to be a younger man, said, well, I drink. I just want you to know that I drink, but God and I, we've worked this out. And that's kind of the way people think. I've got this worked out with God, and so that allows me to do whatever I want to. Well, they don't understand who God is or what God demands. She calls her union love, verse 16. Is it? Why not? It's lust. Because what does love do? There you go. Love is interested in what's best for someone else. And she calls this love. What the Bible calls it, I think about Joseph when he was tempted. He said, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God. That's what it is. But again, she is picturing it and couching it in such a way as to make it seem like it's all right, make it more appealing. She claims their time together will not have any consequences. Is this true? It's just a lie, isn't it? What are the consequences? Leads to death. Loss of a person's soul if they're unwilling to turn.
Everything we do has consequences,
That's right. That's exactly right.
whether they're good or whether they're bad.
I'm looking back at verse 2. Keep my commands and live. And then verse 23 says, he did not know it would cost his life. Yes, sir.
There's a loss of soul, death, but there are also other consequences. There can be physical consequences. There can be diseases that transmit and which also lead to physical death. So it's not just, although the loss of the soul, that's the greatest loss, but there are other things that can follow with it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. How many good things can you think that come out of a situation like this? There's just not any. The father tells the son the consequences are great, verses 22 through 27. Explain why he believes this one night stand is so detrimental to this young man's life. Okay. Cost him his life, cost him his soul. Let's go back and I want to read again from 22. Immediately he went after her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till an arrow struck his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost his life. Now therefore listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For she has cast down many wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. Her house is the way to hell, descending to the chambers of death. A snare for a bird. What entices a bird to a snare? Bait. Smells good, looks good, and that bird just whoosh, and boom. And that's how this young man is described. That's exactly right. Typically, it's where we're weak.
I don't know about this point where it talks about an arrow. The idea here is death can come as a result of this action. What was the penalty for adultery under the law?
Death. Well, we're going to stop right there. We're going to pick up with section 2, and we will, Lord willing, finish the class on Wednesday night. Thank you very much for your participation. I'm not listening, and I'm not